Well, that turned out to be an interesting Grand Prix, didn't it? Hey, everybody, I'm Dre Harrison. Welcome to the WTF1 wrap powered by MoneyGram. It's a coronation weekend here at the Qatar Grand Prix. We kind of had to put Max in the main event picture slot. It was we couldn't not do that. Unfortunately, it is a world championship, but yeah, we kind of had to do it. But yeah, another win for Max Verstappen, his 14th on the year. If you've been keeping score at home already, but we had a lot of fun. We had an Oscar Piastri sprint win, and we had half the drivers almost pass out. So that's surely great Grand Prix, totally safe, not a risk at all. Yeah, everything was absolutely fine and kosher. Hi guys, I'm Dre Harrison, if you didn't know already, and joining me on the WTF1 wrap this week is our man from the world of Instagram and TikTok. He gives us all F1 news and fun stuff as well. Luke Howick is here. Luke, how's it going, big man?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm very well. What did you make of that race then?
It was interesting. Bit of a unique Grand Prix, given that we had all the tyre restrictions and obviously drivers having a stint maximum that they can drive. So I think it made it very unique. Made it a lot of pit stops, good pit stop practice for all the pit stop crew. But I just think that no one can stop Verstappen in any circumstances whatsoever. The guy's unbelievable. And I think that McLaren, for me, are one of the biggest the biggest W of the year, really, because they have come from being ranked last in preseason testing to now being able to challenge with Red Bull consistently and there or thereabouts at the weekend. I think Verstappen even mentioned post race about them being closer to Red Bull than anyone really. So yeah, good to see. And I thought it was an enjoyable race given the circumstances and restrictions that the drivers were under. But obviously, yeah, as you mentioned, the safety aspect of it is probably not a limelight for Formula One, the drivers being unwell after the race.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples. I mean, we'll get into that real quick. Let's quickly say this is obviously the show's powered by our friends at MoneyGram. The Qatar Grand Prix may have just wrapped up, and we'll get into some of that in just a second. But if you're watching from the US, you still have time to enter the MoneyGram Fast Money giveaway for a chance to win some cold hard cash. For this race, MoneyGram is giving away $10,000 in potential prizes. If you want a share of that, and if you haven't done so already, just download the MoneyGram app and sign up for the MoneyGram Haas F1 team updates to enter for your shot at a share of that $10,000. Be sure to register every race weekend, because depending on how well they do, there could be up to $50,000 we give away to fans of the show. So do get in there already. So yeah, I mean, this was a very sketchy Grand Prix. I mean, I think next year it'll certainly be easier because it's going to be a December race. I think if the calendar holds up how it does, I think it's December the 1st or something like that for next year. So it should be a little easier. But I mean, it's 30 plus degrees at night in October. And I mean, Logan Sargent had to park his car through seemingly illness. I hope he's all right. I heard you say I think Lance Stroll's on the way to the medical center as well to get checked over. Ocon threw up in his helmet. George was opening his visor, and Yuki did as well. And I think sand was blowing in as well. So we couldn't even really compromise on like getting some air in the car because there was still sand blowing around. It goes to show you that we don't use this track very often. I mean, we all know it's more famous for MotoGP, but normally it's season opener on two wheels. But yeah, it's not ideal, is it, Luke?
No, it's not. Yeah, I mean, obviously Singapore's the most physical one on the calendar until today. So I'm not really sure what they can do. Maybe having support races there would help with the dust offline. You know, we saw a lot of drivers having a lot of poor grip throughout the weekend. Obviously, it has been resurfaced as well. But I think it's just one of those things. I think it's an awesome track. It's really good to watch. But I think that obviously there's not a lot they can do to make it a little bit, because of how humid and hot it is in Qatar. So good to hear that the drivers got through it, and obviously Logan took the precaution as well. And hopefully all the other drivers who were taken precautionary are all okay, because it does seem very, very physical.
Yeah, no idea. I mean, Herbie Ork in the chat says, yeah, it sounds like they were pretty much doing burpees in a sauna. Yeah, that's certainly a valid comparison, because, I mean, we joke about the Max Verstappen podcast. As soon as they got to the Parc Ferme cool-down room, Piastri was on the floor, back first. These are incredibly fit athletes, and they've just done an hour and a half in sweltering conditions, and yeah, like a quarter of the field has clearly been affected by it. At least it's not ideal. Like I said, I think I agree with Luke. I think it's a great track, and as a MotoGP fan for a long time as well, it's a great MotoGP track certainly as well. If anyone's ever watched some of the fights they've had around that track over the years with Rossi and Lorenzo, Dovizioso and Marquez, etc., for those two-wheeled fans out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a great track potentially. I like the overall spectacle. I think it was actually quite racy as well. Even though we only had one DRS zone, you could follow reasonably well. I think there's potential in this track, but certainly I think that's a great idea, Luke. Bring the support classes over. That wouldn't hurt. I mean, I think it's weird that F2 in its own has like 3 months off between like their second to last and final round in Abu Dhabi. Their calendar is very weird. Why not bring a couple more rounds into the Asian and Middle East side? Let's catch up with the chat real quick as well. Hi, Max. Good to see you. Track limits was the key to the race. It certainly was. I think Perez got 8 in the end and got 3 penalties worth. Which, yeah, not ideal at all. I think Gasly had a couple of penalties. Stroll got 1 on the last race. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we pull up the tier list in a minute as well. Shout out to Gloria. Good to see you. Shout out to Mallory saying, always enjoy this chat. Good to see you, Mallory, as ever. I recognize you in there every week. Lovely to see you. F1 Coffee Corner in there as well. Good to see you. F1 Coffee Corner. Should help there be in there later on in the year, next year as well. Yeah, that will almost certainly help. I think a December race as opposed to early October is certainly the way to go, climate-wise. I'm sure that will help. But hey, maybe it's a global warming problem. Maybe we're all partly responsible for that. Before we get into this as well, we got to give some credit to Max Verstappen a little bit more again as well. I mean, world champion, 3rd year in a row, 14th win of the year. This is just otherworldly. I mean, he was comfortable out there. I mean, did it even look like he was really pushing in the second half of that race? He was under complete control, and him in that car is just it's special, Luke, isn't it? I mean, and I think you'd have to be a real hater not to acknowledge that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's really how he deals with certain situations. He's got the fastest car, but I think Verstappen is just now in the last few years turning into just one of those drivers who you would think is just completely unstoppable. Even when things don't go well. But I think Red Bull as a whole, I think they also deserve quite a lot of credit. The strategy team, the operations team, the pit stop teams, they always nail it. They always seem to be on the ball, even in the crazy circumstances. Like in Zandvoort when we had horrendous rain with loads of laps to go. And I think that Verstappen and his relationship with GP and his engineer, the whole organization is nailed on. And to have one of the best drivers in the world, the best driver in the world, and arguably slowly climbing up the rankings of the best ever, is just incredible. It was nailed on, really, and it's very impressive to see what he can do and where he can put that car. Things that come to mind is like the Monaco Grand Prix, the final sector, when he was 2/10 down on Alonso and ended up being a 10th up and getting pole position, even though he hit the wall in the last couple of corners. So it's fantastic to see. And like you say, yeah, I think you have to be a little bit too harsh to not be impressed by what he's doing. Even if he does have the fastest machinery, that doesn't always necessarily mean that you can win 10 races in a row and dominate the way he has.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I am an F1 fan first. I don't have a particular favourite driver. Don't let the Hamilton helmet in the background fool you. But okay, maybe it's not the most entertaining to watch in the world, but yeah, it's hard to deny that, you know, the man is putting, like I said on Twitter yesterday, I think it's the greatest 3-year run this sport has ever seen. The 2021 title, yes, we all know how it ended, but he was trading punches with Hamilton all the way through. 2022, knew he nailed the regulation set, but Max has still been able to convert it. He had 15 wins last season. He's had 14 this year. We've never seen anything like this in F1. He is, for me, you know, clearly up there, top 10 all time now for me with 3 titles and 40, I think it's like 48 wins, something silly like that now. By most metrics, he's one of the greatest ever. And, he's got plenty of time to improve on that as well, which is equally terrifying. Well, when you look at it like that. But congrats to Max Verstappen, the Red Bull team as well in general, as Luke quite rightly said, on an operation performance level as well. They've just been across the board virtually flawless. Strategically, they've been up there. The pit crew is phenomenal. They tick every single box. Maybe except the teammate situation, but we'll get to that in the tier list right about now. In fact, let's pull that list up right about now in front of me. Whoop. There it is. As usual, on the WTF1 wrap, we go from S to D, S, A, B, C, and D. We're just going to focus on the Grand Prix on this one, because the last time we did this with a sprint weekend, it got a bit sketchy, saying, well, this guy had a really good sprint, this guy didn't have a really good Grand Prix. It was a bit confusing, so we're going to streamline it, make it easy. If you guys want to chip in the chat, feel free. Give me drivers, give me grades, and who knows, I might swing a few your way, depending on how me and Luke decide how we go between them here. But we're just going to try and focus on the Grand Prix as much as possible, just to make it a little bit easier to watch and to follow along with. So send in your thoughts as ever. Should we get the easy one out of the way, Luke? Should we get Max out of the way? We've done this many a time on this show. Only once has he not been in the S tier since we started this show back in Spain. Max Verstappen dominated, Grand Slam victory in the end, because there was one lap that was a bit close with Albon, but it turns out that Max did hit the line first. So it's a Grand Slam. It's a perfect race for Max Verstappen in the end. Easy S tier for them. I don't know how you feel about this, Luke. I kind of want to put both McLarens in S with him. Is that fair? How do you feel about that?
I definitely think Piastri
yes.
is definitely in S tier.
Absolutely.
I think Lando is an interesting one because obviously he made in terms of it's the race, isn't it? So yeah, okay, both in S tier. They both drove really, really well. Both played the team game as well. Both had the pace of each other. I think Piastri edged out Norris near the end when they were reminded of team orders, and yeah, it's good to see them 2 and 3. So I can't really argue. They didn't do anything wrong. Didn't put a foot wrong. So yeah, I agree.
I'm with you on that. I think Norris is cheeky. I like the fact that he was right at the end. He was closing in on Piastri. I think he was doing that to send a little message, maybe more than anything else. So the man is under a little bit of pressure. I mean, how do you feel about Oscar Piastri this season? Because obviously he's kind of really shot up there now. He's really starting to put together some good performances. Naturally, I think with a rookie that's performing this well, of course he won the sprint as well, people are going to get excited. Where do you sit on Piastri relative to Norris right now? Because I think it's a fascinating sort of inter-team battle that might be brewing down there.
He is one of the most exciting rookies we've had in a while, I think. His rookie season is absolutely fantastic. You know, he had a season out of driving cars, obviously missing out last year because he didn't get a seat when he won Formula 2, I believe. So it's really good to see. I mean, the performances has been incredible. At tracks as well that he's never driven at before. Qatar, he's never driven there before. Even he didn't drive there in 2021. So it's really, really good to see. He just slowly just kept clawing away, and he's always there to match Lando. And I think that it's really great to see. He made a fantastic choice to choose McLaren, and he's such an exciting driver. And if he's doing this after literally a season where he only had a minimum preseason 3-day preseason testing, then straight into a full season of Formula One where eyeballs are always on you when you're a rookie, I think it's fantastic to see. And obviously, won the sprint this weekend. I think he only got pipped by Max in Belgium for the sprint. He's had some fantastic performances this year. And it's also really hard to go up against Lando Norris. Lando Norris is a fantastic talent, and no doubt will eventually win a race. I think it could happen in the next couple of races, and definitely he'll get a shot next year. So it's a lot of pressure to go up against somebody as good and as seasoned as Lando, considering he's been here for a while. So I think he's doing a fantastic job, and it's really, really good to see.
Yeah, I mean, He's made me look a bit silly because I was trying to tell people to pump the brakes on the Piastri hype train just a little bit after Japan. And he's made me look bloody stupid this weekend. So thanks, Oscar. I really appreciate that on that one. But no, it's hard to deny. Like, people are excited for good reason. Norris has found a worthy adversary. This is not the Daniel Ricciardo situation of the previous couple of years. Piastri belongs. He can follow Norris through. He's close to his level. He's pushing Norris. Norris has admitted that himself, that Piastri's pushed him and made him uncomfortable, and that's good for all parties. And yeah, Mallory in the chat says, I think they are the strongest driver pairing on the grid. I'm inclined to agree. I think you're very close. But I think between them, Mercedes and Ferrari, I think you've got viable arguments for all three. I think that you could certainly... right now, with the way they're driving, you could probably throw Norris and Piastri in that conversation with Mercedes of Hamilton and Russell, and likely Sainz and Leclerc at Ferrari. I think they're all very strong pairings in their own way. Yeah, a lot to be excited about if you're a fan of the papaya. As OJ Jones in the chat is papaya gang with all the love hearts in there, and that's orange. Yeah. I wonder who you support. I don't think it's Haas somehow. F1 Coffee Corner says, I think McLaren have a strong partnership, but I feel Oscar will start outscoring Lando, which will cause issues. Maybe. Maybe next year. Not so much this year, because Norris has comfortably been the better when it comes to overall scoring and head-to-heads, but you expect that when you're up against the rookie. Next year, with a full off-season under his belt, maybe. That could be a very fascinating matchup to keep tabs on, certainly. I kind of want to put one more man in S. This might be controversial because of how he was caught up at turn 1. But I think George Russell drove really, really well today to get back up to 4th place, given he had to take the early stop from the Hamilton incident. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, Luke, but I think it's kind of hard to say that Russell was really to blame for any of that. How do you feel about it, and where would you rank Russell?
I think it's an interesting one. Would I put him on the same level as Verstappen and Piastri? Maybe not, just purely because those three were in another league. But Russell he had the edge over Lewis in qualifying. Mm-hmm. He did particularly well in the sprint, was very bold on the softs.
Yep.
And then during the race today, he was able to recover significantly after a pretty big hit. He also suffered a puncture from the hit at turn 1. So I think Russell definitely drove extremely well this weekend. I think S is maybe my personal opinion, maybe a little bit too high, but to recover the way he did is really, really good to see, given the fact that the W14, when damaged, seems to be, and the W13, when it has damage, seems to absolutely come alive. He made some fantastic moves. He was obviously on the back foot and an offsetted strategy, and would have been interesting to see if he didn't have that off when he came on the soft tyres and lost like 4 or 5 seconds, if he would have been able to catch the McLarens. But no, yeah, very, very strong from George.
Very strong. You said A. I was leaning more towards S to chat. Give me your opinions on that. I might change Russell. I'll leave him in A for the time being. I think maybe just a cut below the McLarens is probably about right, but I agree with you, Mallory, who says, I agree, George did about as well as he could given the circumstances. I'm inclined to agree with you there, Mallory. Yes, we'll see on that one. Hi, Kyle, and hi, Lewis, as well on the chat. Good to see you. Speaking of Lewis, what do we do here? Because, wow, his race lasted 1 corner. And you look at the replays, Lewis took full accountability for it. He said it was 100% his fault. We haven't got much choice but to put him in D, do we? Because his race lasted a corner and it was an incident he was responsible for. It's a bit like sort of like inconclusive, really, because you don't really know what would have happened. But yeah, he only lasted, well, I wouldn't even say half a corner.
I would say literally mid apex of turn 1. Obviously, got the jump, got a really, really good start, and obviously was alongside the three of them. But yeah, you can't really judge Lewis's race purely because he was out in the gravel at turn 1 and was doing media pens while everyone else was going around the circuit. So no, I'd be inclined to agree.
Yeah, has to be D for Lewis on this one. Everyone Coffee Corner agrees, says Lewis has to be a D, especially as he's taken accountability. Hard to argue with that. He owned it. He said he saw the replay on camera and was like, yeah, that's on me, basically. And it's a shame. It's the first time I've actually had Lewis, I think, lower than a B all season, because he's just been so good all year, so consistent. But given he started on the soft tyre, I think maybe live to fight another day and maybe don't push that one so hard. I think that's a shame. Also, I love that we also don't get to score Carlos Sainz today because Sainz didn't even start this race, unfortunately. I'll put him as a courtesy C tier. We normally put technical DNFs in C. When I put the written version of this up on the website, I probably would even just bother even including him because, unfortunately, his car, for those who don't know, his car had a fuel leak before the race had even started. They pulled him out with about an hour to go before the race starts. An unfortunate one for Carlos on that one. His race didn't even get going. Chloe says, if we're chatting about this race in particular and Lewis goes higher than D, then Carlos is S tier. I can't disagree with you, Chloe. But yeah, traditionally we normally stick technical DNFs in C just as a neutral sort of zone for it. So for decoration purposes, for all you Sainz fans out there watching along, at least he's on the board somewhere. So we'll put him in C for the time being. I want to put Charles Leclerc in A as well. A quiet day for him. 5th place on the day. I think that's about right for Ferrari. I don't think they ever particularly looked all that quick this weekend. Sometimes I think it just pays to have a quiet, solid day and not make any major mistakes. I think A, the top 5 finish. Lost out to Russell. I don't know if that knocks him down into B a little bit. I'm inclined to say A for Charles. I don't know how you feel about it, Luke.
He maximised the potential of the car. I'm sure Ferrari fans will be very happy when that car is no longer their car and they go into 2024 with a whole new build. Because it seems really tricky. They keep upgrading it and they just keep not able to get on top of issues. They bring an upgrade and they get one issue and then another issue's fixed and they get another issue. I think Charles maximised his race today. I think B sort of is probably fair. He can only do what he can with the tools he's given. Pulled some really nice overtakes and managed to get a top 5, like you say, with the tools that he was given. And I think it was a strong drive for him. And it's very quiet. Didn't really see a lot of him today, but he was managing to get into the top 5, which is always a positive when you've not got the machinery to fight the cars in front. And it'll be good points considering Sainz didn't start for their battle with Merck for P2 in the championship. Right.
No, definitely. The chat's a bit split on this one. Herb York says an A is reasonable, good, but not spectacular race. Wolf says B. George is an A with the amazing recovery. Charles is more of a sitting duck today. That guy Vince, hi Vince, says neutral race for Charles, but being outscored by Russell, who was at the back of the grid, is pretty poor. I'd say B. I'll let you have the casting vote, Luke. How do you feel about it, A or B?
I would say I'm more inclined to go for B, because I feel that, yes, he got a top 5 finish, but it was just, like a quiet one. I feel like there were definitely some drivers who I feel deserve to be in A, who maybe went under the radar a bit lower down. So I would say B.
Who would you have in mind for one of those guys that went under the radar? And we'll do him next. Go, your choice, Luke.
Under the radar. I would say the 2 Alfa Romeo drivers drove really well today. They both were in the points, P9, P8. Obviously, a little bit fortunate with the fact that Perez got so many track limit penalties. Like me driving on F1 23, the amount of penalties he got. I think it's just they went under the radar. They've had so many problems this year. They've had so much going wrong. At times, so slow, and they were almost so far off even just the Hasses and the Williams, and to get the pair of them into the points, I think they'll be really happy with that. And I think that both of them drove absolutely fantastically well, and I think they definitely deserve to be up there because they drove that car into the points is outstanding.
Yeah, I fully agree. I've already put both Alfa Romeo drivers in the A tier. I think that's absolutely fair. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, I think you may have noticed that the top of the board is so stacked right now. With the top 5 or 6 is pretty nailed on most weekends now. Between obviously Red Bull at the top, you got McLaren, Aston Martin, Ferrari, and Mercedes. Like it's hard for these lower end teams to score points as well. There's such a massive drop off in that constructor standings. 6 points for Alfa Romeo is absolutely priceless. That puts them above Haas and into 8th in the constructors. Yeah, that is an incredibly important weekend. Easily the best Alfa Romeo weekend of the year. And yeah, Zhou actually ended up 9th in the end as well because of Sergio Perez's late track limits penalty. He got a third one after the race was over, so it bumped Zhou up from 10th to 9th, which I want to say is ties his best ever finish. I think it's right up there. It's very close. I think it's either 8th or 7th, 8th or 9th. But yeah, Bottas followed him home in 8th. Good to see him. Like, just good to show that when the car is competitive, Bottas can still lead a team, certainly. And yeah, Zhou to follow him through. That's a fantastic weekend for Alfa Romeo. And I've joked on this show that they're the participation trophy team of Formula One. They're just there most weekends. But to get both guys in A is a great weekend for Alfa Romeo. That could be priceless by season's end. That could be worth a few million quid in extra prize money. So good shout out to them. This might be controversial, unless you want to argue this one with me, Luke. I'm going to put Perez in D.
Can't argue with that. Horrendous weekend. Not just the race. Obviously, yesterday had an awful sprint. Obviously he was a sitting duck, really, an innocent bystander for the incident, but he shouldn't be down there. He's in the RB 19, is it?
19,
so
yeah.
it just does show what an incredible job Verstappen's doing. Just one of those races today. Checo is a very interesting driver because sometimes you look at him and you think he's absolutely brilliant. And tracks like Jeddah this year, and I think he was super fast in so many different tracks, and it's great to see. And then you've got performances like today. The last couple of performances have been not great. And given that Lewis did DNF, we are talking about the prospect of Lewis Hamilton getting second in the championship without winning a single race. It's highly likely that Lewis will not win a single race this year, with only a few tracks really suiting. And for Perez to be in that car that is so far ahead in the constructors, you've got Verstappen who's winning the title with 6 to go. You can't be fighting at the bottom with Alpines and the Hasses.
He was lapped.
He was lapped by his teammate, and that's not the first time. I think in Monaco he got 2 laps put on him. And I just think that Checo, is it the fact that there is pressure? There is widely respected that Ricciardo is waiting for that 2024 call up, should it need be. It's also regarded that he will be in the seat for Perez will be in the seat for 2024. But it's just one of those things. Checo cannot perform especially if the field gets close. If McLaren continue this form into next year, got a new wind tunnel now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Start bringing performance-based upgrades that are done in the wind tunnel. Perez has got to improve. He's got to improve his qualifying, and he's got to improve his race pace is usually pretty good. And it was quite surprising to see him pick up quite a lot of time penalties today. He's usually very good at keeping it within the limits, at least. I think he was one of the drivers who was okay in Austria. But so yeah, it's a disappointing weekend as a whole when he needed a strong weekend, which is obviously disappointing.
Yeah, the chat fully in agreement. F1 Coffee Corner, 15 seconds worth of time penalties for track limits. Lapped has to be a D. Mallory Clark said a bad look that Russell moved back through the field, but Perez never did. Yeah, Wolf says Perez with 10 seconds total, competing with Stroll over a single point, being lapped by Max. And Chloe quite right saying, even then, should he be in that seat if the pressure gets too much? These are all valid points, and I mentioned it when I wrote about it on the website a couple of weeks ago. You can check that out if you just search my name for author stuff if you really want to see what I write up on the website. But I had an opinion piece after Japan, and I said after Japan that if like the Lawson situation where you're so good standing in those weekends, I don't think the bottleneck in the Red Bull driver driver setup is Tsunoda versus Lawson or Ricciardo. I think it's Sergio Perez that is the biggest weakness in that entire Red Bull umbrella, because this is not good enough. It's not good enough for a driver of his standard, because if anyone that's seen Checo's career knows he's always been a quality midfielder. One of the best in F1 for many, many years. He can win races on his own, on merit. He's better than what he's been showing for the last few rounds, and this has not been good enough. It's unacceptable. So we're halfway through the list right now. So let's get into the MoneyGram send of the day real quick for best overtake. Luke, did you have anything in mind for the MoneyGram send of the day real quick? Any of it that jumped off the page to you? I guess we had a couple of decent fights in there.
Yeah, there were a few. I'm just thinking. The whole race seems like a bit of a blur, really.
They go very quickly.
I did like the one you talked about, Nico Hulkenberg. That was quite a good move. Russell into turn 6. I think Sky Sports said the Russell corner.
The Russell corner.
I like that. Took Piastri there yesterday, the sprint. He made some really, really good sends there. I think particularly. I can't remember who he overtook quite a few cars there, but I do like the Nico Hulkenberg one that you suggested.
Yeah, Hulkenberg round the outside. So I want to say it was on one of the Alpines. I can't remember quite which one it was. I think it might have been Pierre Gasly. But Hulkenberg, hey, it's even better. We get to give it to a Haas driver from a MoneyGram sponsored segment. What's not to love? Nico Hulkenberg gets our send of the day for the MoneyGram send of the day there for best overtake during Qatar. But before we get back into the tier list as well, a quick plug for their Vegas Dream Weekend. The Las Vegas Grand Prix is less than 2 months away, and MoneyGram is giving away a trip of a lifetime to experience the inaugural Vegas race with MoneyGram Haas F1 team. Just go to dreams.moneygram.com and answer the question, what drives your dreams? Fill out the form and you'll be entered to win 2 amazing Paddock Club tickets, airfare, hotel accommodation, as well as $5,000 in cash as well. A whole shebang. It's the whole incredible experience. It's a package worth nearly 50 grand. It's an incredible package. So go to dreams.moneygram.com. Answer what drives your dreams. Fill out the form. It's a dream trip to Las Vegas. I was very fortunate to be there last month. It was an incredible experience. The Sphere, the Top Golf in the area, the MGM Grand. It was absolutely unbelievable. You will love it if you're lucky enough. So please enter this competition and take advantage. And hey, hopefully Haas will see you in Vegas. So yeah, best of luck on that one. Back to the tier list real quick. So we got 10 names to go. I want to do Fernando Alonso. He's an interesting case here because he was 6th. That's not a bad result for Aston Martin in the grand scheme of things. Bit sloppy, made a couple of mistakes here and there. Went a little bit off-roady in turn 2 at a certain point. I'm kind of torn between A and B here for Fernando. I don't know how you feel about it, Luke.
I think P6 is good. I think Aston have really struggled, which is something I didn't expect to say, considering where they were at the start of this year, arguably where McLaren were now. But Fernando drove, I think, pretty well. I think he only made that one error, but turn 2, like you say, I'd probably go inclined to say B, purely because I think he drove again similar to Charles. He gave it all with the tools that he was given. Obviously, did ask to have water thrown over him as well because his seat was hot.
Yeah.
I think he drove well. P6 is strong, considering that Aston Martin have definitely had their struggles in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So I think B's strong.
Yeah, B says Wolf says B got to be that mistake. Mallory says B, between B and C for Vince. I'd say B given the mix of performance and mistakes. Yeah, B it is. That's fine. Maybe I'm been too generous tonight. Maybe I've just been very, very kind over the course of the weekend. But yeah, B for Alonso, which is a bit strange for an Alonso P6, but given the mistakes, I think that's actually quite valid in the end. I'm tempted to put Esteban Ocon up in the A tier. Ocon was 7th in the Alpine. We know Alpine, I think, is a touch behind that real heavy-hitting block. I'm not sure you could have asked much more out of Esteban than this race. How do you feel about it?
I mean, he obviously also said that he threw up in his helmet.
Yeah,
so, to be able to continue the race for 3/4 of the race, having done that is insane. I'm probably say between A and B, like if it's like a B.5, like there. I think it's similar to Fernando Alonso, optimizing it. But as you say, Alpine have really struggled this season. Have really, points for them is a good position, is a good thing. But obviously, he did finish ahead of the likes of the Alfa Romeo. And it was a strong result for him. I'd probably be inclined to say maybe B, just because he did do particularly well with the car that he was given, but I'm maybe not just that level of optimization that maybe others did.
Maybe.
But between A and B.
Between A and B, Her says, yeah, an A feels right to me. Close, especially after lap 15. Fair play to him. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say A on this one. I think it feels right to me that he's an A, because that Alpine is nowhere near some of those other real big hitters around him in terms of quality of car. So I think with that in mind, I'm going to say A on this one and go a little bit towards more of the chat on that one. Again, guys, feel free to chip into the chat as well if you feel like it. Again, I may be inclined to change my mind a little bit. Wolf says A seems fair to walk on. I'm inclined to agree. I put him in P purely because of the others who are in A, says Chloe. Yeah, it's a tight one. It is definitely a tight one. I might come back to it depending on how I feel, but I think for now I'm going to say A on this one. So I think I might change my mind at the end. We'll see how we go. I'll look at the tiers at the end and I go, maybe see how I feel about it. But who else have we got? Let's do his teammate. Let's do Gasly. He was 12th. I'm more inclined to go B/C with Gasly, given the amount of time penalties he picked up for track limits and the fact that he was out of the points in 12th. I think he would have been in the points if he hadn't breached track limits. Again, at the timing screens I've got in front of me, I think he had 10 seconds of time penalties. If he doesn't get him, he's 9th ahead of Perez. And he's in that sort of Perez, Zhou, Stroll sort of fight. I'm tempted to go C here. How do you feel about it, Luke?
Yeah, I think C's probably fair. Obviously picked up the time penalty, but also had a couple of erratic moments where he was overtaking off track. I think he had a particular one around the outside of Stroll, I think it was, where he hung it around the outside and went off track and did that a few times. So I think C's probably fair. Again, beaten by his teammate Ocon, obviously having the physical issues and still finished ahead. Obviously, the penalties is an interesting one, but obviously he should be the one who is driving within the limits, etc. Obviously, did do a sprint before that as well, so a bit of a mistake, I think, to pick up a couple of penalties. I think that was probably what knocks it down to a C. For me.
I think that's fair as well. I've got no problem with that. What do we do with Lance? Are we going to put Lance Stroll in C as well? Because obviously, this actually wasn't too bad from Lance. But again, late penalty for track limits knocked him out of the points in the end. I would have been more inclined to put him in B with Fernando if he'd actually kept it clean, but he didn't. So I kind of want to say the same for Stroll. It's a C for him as well?
Lance is an interesting one because as a weekend as a whole, it was terrible. He was pretty poor. Probably the headline of qualifying on Friday, and not much better in the sprint on Saturday. So it's a very interesting one. If we're looking at this race in particular, I think he actually just mentioned to the media that in the high speed that he was passing out in the high speeds from all the heat. So again, it's one way just being able to grit it out and the mental strength that they've got. I would be inclined to say, I think C is probably like the limit, like the top tier that I would put him in. But as we're going off of this race, I'd say probably C. I think he did get points, I believe. Obviously, I
think he was just outside. I think he was 11th.
Right. So I think it's like between C and D. Obviously, picked up quite a few track limit penalties. Didn't have the cleanest of races. But I'd say between C and D probably.
It's actually it's actually kind of sad that 11th for Stroll's kind of an improvement for him, really.
Oh, for sure. I mean, his best qualifying for the last 4 or 5 races is P17, and his teammate's been in Q3. So it's one of those ones where to be on the edge of the points is actually quite good for Stroll. And as I said, like you say, had he not had those penalties, who knows where he would have finished.
Would have been in that fight for a point or two.
Definitely.
Most certainly. Amazing. This actually was the race was probably the best part of an otherwise pretty dreadful weekend for Stroll. 11th actually isn't too bad, all things considered. But still I think C's. I think C with Gasly is about right for him. Okay, I'm going to put Logan Sargent quickly in C as well because he pulled out. It was for medical reasons. Clearly, he wasn't well. I actually think Sargent was driving pretty well in the race until that. It was only a few seconds down the road from teammate Alex Albon, and I think that's about as much as you can realistically ask of Logan as a rookie. I know he's under a lot of pressure. I think he actually drove quite well in the race itself. Though the sprint was a bit unfortunate with that spin, but Grand Prix itself, I think he actually was solid. And look, as a side note, just as a quick extra note from me, is actually in such a macho dominated, big balls kind of, we've got to extract every bit of performance out of a race car. It was actually quite nice to see that Williams said there's no shame in parking the car if you can't continue. It's actually quite reassuring to see that, and I know Logan was incredibly frustrated, but he could barely get out of his car when he parked it early. I think, so I praise Williams for not putting Logan under any pressure whatsoever to continue. That's a brave thing to do, because let's be honest, it's sports. People will play through just about anything sometimes. And yeah, I just wanted to give a nudge of the cap to Williams on that one. I'm a big fan of what James Vowles is doing over there at the moment, and my respect to Logan and the team for treating something as serious as that as not compromising on safety or the health of the driver in any way, shape, or form. So that's actually, I wanted to give a nod and a shout out to Logan and the team for that one. Well done to him for hanging on as long as he did, on that front at least. I just wanted to give a quick note to that. We got 5 folks left. Yuki, lap down 15th. What happened to AlphaTauri this weekend? Like, both of them were not like this. It's like the humbling for Liam Lawson as well. After being so brilliant in his standing drives this weekend. Lawson just wasn't really all that of the races this weekend. I'm kind of thinking C's for both AlphaTauris. How are you feeling on that, Luke?
Yeah, I think C's probably fair. I think you can, with these types of where the cars are really not suited to the track, and you can clearly see that the drivers are struggling. I think it's always good to base it off of their teammate. Yuki obviously had the pace over Lawson during the race, I believe. Lawson did have obviously made an error yesterday as well. So I think C's probably fair. They struggled this weekend, no doubt about it. Neither of them really put a foot wrong in the race. I think it'd be a bit harsh to put them at the bottom, considering they didn't make any mistakes. I don't think Yuki may have picked up a track limit penalty, maybe, but you can only do so much. I think C's probably fair for both.
Yeah, I think C's about right for the pair of them. We'll get to the Hasses right at the end. Alex Albon, 13th on the day. I think that was just about as much as Williams could have asked for him, really. They kind of knew going into this weekend they were going to struggle with this kind of track, and sadly they did. But I'm going to put Albon. I think I'm going to put Albon in C. But what I would give an asterisk is say, great job to get a couple of points in the sprint, because that was an excellent drive to get. I think it was 7th place after the time penalty shook out for Charles Leclerc. Shame the Grand Prix didn't quite go the same way for them as well. I think so. I'm going to put Albon in C. The Hasses are the last to go. Magnussen 14th. Hulkenberg, I don't think it would have really mattered, but he got a 10-second time penalty for parking in the wrong grid slot. So, that's a funny one, I have to say. For those who don't know, you have to leave the blank space. You can't just bunch everybody in, because obviously Carlos Sainz couldn't take his spot on the grid due to his fuel leak. So Hulkenberg just thought, I'll just move up one spot. It's fine. That's not how this works. I don't think it really would have mattered in the end. I think Haas just are not there at the moment, unfortunately. 14th for K-Mag, 16th for Hulkenberg. Do I dare put... Do we give a courtesy C grade for K-Mag because he was the stronger Haas on the day, and we put Hulkenberg in D for the funny mistake? Is that funny? Would that work?
Well, it was a bit of a cheeky mistake, really.
Yeah.
I mean, props for trying it. Never going to come off. I think K-Mag had the better of the weekends. Kind of similar with the AlphaTauris, really, is that you can only go off certain aspects.
Yeah.
Obviously, K-Mag did finish ahead of Yuki. I think K-Mag did have a strong race, and strong race for what he's got. Haas seemed to be very peculiar. They obviously got a very big upgrade coming for Austin, completely new car. that's going to be super interesting to see how that works. All eyes will sort of be on them home race as well. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, no, for sure. I think those results are definitely fair, and hopefully, fingers crossed, Haas can find some form, because it would be good to have that fight in for the last couple of positions in the constructors' title, with AlphaTauri, Williams, and Haas and Alfa Romeo.
Look, Haas, I'm going to be real with you here. We're a little bit biased. I want to give away more money on this show. Have the Austin upgrades work. Fix that tyre wear. Please. Please. I want to give away more money. That would be really cool. Okay? Like, you've just been passed into 9th by Alfa Romeo. Come on, Haas. Like, please. I want to give some viewers some money away. That would be really cool. So that, I think, is the final list. We've got Verstappen and the McLarens in S. Russell in A with the Alfa Romeos and Ocon. We've got Leclerc and Alonso in B. C grade is the C tier is pretty stacked this episode. I think it's the biggest I've ever seen it. We've got Sainz obviously for the technical reasons, Logan Sargent, Stroll, Gasly, the Alphas, and also the last time we got to pretend Daniel Ricciardo is Liam Lawson, as you do. Sorry about that, technically speaking. Albon and Magnussen in C, and then D, Hulkenberg, Perez, and Hamilton. Are you happy with that, Luke? I think that seems about right to me. I'm happy with that. Are you?
Yep, I think so.
I'm happy with that. I think the chat, is pretty much in agreement as well. C's good. AlphaTauri somehow have the worst strategy when all it was do 18 laps, pit, repeat. Yeah, maybe they had tyre wear problems. I'm not sure on that one. I'd like to hear more, because I know Yuki was in on lap 10 and I was like, oh, not so much. Chloe C says, I put Gasly in D purely because many of the drivers currently in C struggled and maybe didn't perform exceptionally, but Gasly was all over the place. A little bit. I still think 12th isn't dreadful, given the car he's in. I think that's about par for Alpine anyway. So I think I'm happy with him in C. I can see the argument, but compared to the 3 guys below him, I don't think Gasly's on that sort of discussion, personally. That's how I look at it, personally. But I appreciate the opinion. Also, F1 Coffee Corner says that look of panic on Hulkenberg's face when you could see he knew straight away he'd messed it up. Yep. It's if you're a really old school F1 fan, it reminded me of Giancarlo Fisichella. He did that. If you remember those clips, he did it in Malaysia, I think, a couple of times where he was in the wrong grid slot. That's one for you older fans out there. You might appreciate that one a little bit. It reminded me a lot of that. So I think for fewer reasons, we'll leave that there. But that'll do it for the WTF1 wrap powered by MoneyGram after the Qatar Grand Prix. Luke, tell the good people where they can find you. What do you do? You know, tell them where they can find you. Give yourself a little plug.
It's just my name, Luke Howick. It's just on TikTok. I have been hailed the F1 news updater. I basically just make content on news, all the updates in Formula One, all the new content that comes out across all race weekends. Try and cover every single day of the race weekend, and then also during the off season, and all the car updates, car launches for the new season. And that's my TikTok. You can follow my Instagram as well, where I just sort of post random stories about Liverpool winning and Lewis not winning. So yeah.
Did Liverpool win today?
No, we drew 2-2 with Brighton.
Oh, Brighton, yeah. I was only kind of half watching that with all the pre-race stuff going on. As a United fan, I'm just glad we actually won a game of football for once. Yeah. That's a nice plus. Thanks, Scott McTominay. We owe you a beer. Thanks for challenging your Scotland form into United for once. Much appreciated. But yeah, thank you to everyone that watched along. Please give Luke a little bump from us if you enjoyed his takes and his perspective on the show. He's been a great guest to have. Thank you all very much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. However few hours of it we've got left on a Sunday night. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time for the post-Austin edition of the WTF1 wrap powered by MoneyGram. Thank you all so much for watching. Shout out to F1 Coffee Corner, to Hare, to KK, to that guy Vince, Ty Gloria. Thanks for watching along as always. I see the same names in here, so you guys I know really enjoy the show. So thank you for continually coming back every week. I do really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time after Austin. Until then, I've been Dre Harrison. He's been Luke Howick. Until then, take care. Sayonara.